Okay, so now those are the arches. Now what are the functions of these arches? See, arches, they distribute body weight to the weight-bearing areas of the sole, mainly heel and toes. These are the main weight-bearing areas. Out of the later, weight is borne mainly on the first and fifth toes. When first and fifth toe, they come directly and rest on the ground. That's why. Lateral border of the foot also is bearing some weight, but this is reduced due to presence of lateral longitudinal arch. So arches, they act as springs, okay, chiefly medial longitudinal arch, which helps us in walking and also running. They act as shock absorbers, especially in jumping. The concavity is protecting the underlying structures. Okay, the character of medial arch is its resiliency and also it is strong, quite strong rigidity. We can see how this tibialis posterior tendon is splitting and it is going and giving connection to each and every bone of the foot. Okay, so summary you can just go through and you can just also see the comparative study. I gave you the details in that. Then you can write few clinical aspects. Suppose if the medial and lateral arches are not present, you call that condition as flat foot or pes planus. Okay, obviously so many functions are there with arches of foot, isn't it? They are giving protection to underlying structures, they help in walking, running, jumping, whatnot, isn't it? So all these effective work of the foot is very much disturbed, and the weight bearing capacity of the foot is also disturbed, and the structures will directly come on the ground and they get compressed. The blood vessels like medial lateral plantar vessels and nerves, they get compressed, because of which person will have pain along the distribution of these nerves and vessels, metatarsalgia. Okay. Sometimes you will see the foot is too much deep, more than it is required. You call it as pes cavus. Okay. If it is flat, you call it as flat feet. If it is too much exaggerated, you call it as pes cavus, and this is the normal foot, what it should be. Okay. So like that, we have some other conditions like talipes equinus, where patient is walking on toes. So with heel rest, generally in polio cases we see this. Talipes calcaneus, where patient walks on heel with the forefoot raised. Okay. Talipes varus, in which patient is walking on outer border of the foot, which is inverted and adducted. Valgus is opposite. Patient walks on inner border of foot, which is everted and abducted. Okay. So like that, we have so many deformities, and of course, shoe are available to support any of these type of deformities. Okay, beta. The next question, what do we have? I think liver. Visceral surface of the liver and development, microscopic appearance. Okay. So what are the structures we see on the visceral surface of liver beta? What are the organs we have there? Ritika?
Stomach,
Very good.
uh,
Gastric
kidney,
impression, renal impression, esophageal impression. Yes, beta. Any other? Just imagine like as though you are doing dissection in the body, and under the liver, what are the organs we may find? Ascending colon is there, no? Right colic flexure, isn't it? As you said,
yes,
stomach, esophagus, right kidney, isn't it? Right suprarenal gland. Yes, left side, left colic flexure, left kidney. Can
yes, ma'am.
please mute better, little disturbance is there. Okay, liver visceral relations 306. Development from which player better? It develops from endoderm with the junction of foregut and midgut. 306. Hepatic word. We'll see as we proceed. visceral surface. See here button. See liver seen from behind. Yeah. See, these are the inferior surface, which is also called as visceral surface. So in this visceral surface, as you said, we started with, you said gastric area. So this is right lobe of the liver, okay, and this whole thing what you find here, the big lobe is the right lobe, okay, and the pointed edge what we have here is the left lobe of the liver, okay, right lobe and left lobe, okay. So when you see on the visceral surface of the left lobe, you can see stomach is moving like this. Stomach is present on the left side. So that's how you see this is esophageal impression, this is gastric impression. In continuation, we have pyloric part of the stomach. This is duodenal impression. That means this is GIT. Very good picture. Okay, esophageal, gastric, pyloric impression, duodenal impression. Then this is right lobe, so right colic flexion, right colic impression, above which you have right kidney, right suprarenal gland. Okay, beta? So this is the visceral surface. Apart from that, on visceral surface, you will see fossa for gallbladder, where you will see the gallbladder is situated. This is the area where we do not have peritoneal covering. Underneath this, you call it as bare area. Then the other structures you see on visceral surface is this is ligamentum venosum and this is porta hepatis, where we have portal vein, bile duct, and hepatic artery, VAD. Okay, then we have two lobes. No, this is the quadrate lobe and this is caudate lobe. Okay, and this is our inferior vena cava. So all these impressions you see on the visceral surface. So apart from that, now he is asking histology. Histology, you have, when you see under microscope, liver shows hexagonal hepatic lobules or liver lobules. In the central area, we have central vein. Suppose if you join three central veins, this particular area is called as portal lobule. Portal lobule. And suppose if you join two central veins of two adjacent hexagonal hepatic lobules, you call it as liver acinus. Okay? Then, now suppose if you take one hexagonal hepatic liver lobule, you see this is the area of central vein, this is the area of central vein, this is the area. That means this is one hexagon incompletely shown, one hexagon incompletely shown, this is one more hexagon. So these are all radiating hepatocytes. In between the radiating hepatocytes, we are finding sinusoids. And at the margin of each, you are finding portal triad. That means hepatic artery, bile duct, and portal vein. Okay? So like that, you have to talk about histology. Now, when you talk about development, at the junction of foregut and midgut, you will see there is a formation of bird called as hepatic bird. Hepatic bird will differentiate into pars hepatica and pars cystica. Okay, development is written, not shown. Pars cystica and pars hepatica. Cystica will give rise to extrahepatic biliary apparatus. Pars hepatica, which is the part of endoderm, it goes and meets the septum transversum and it divides into two lobes, right and left lobes, which keep on growing and then it leads to the formation of complete liver. This happens during the third week of intrauterine life. Okay, so that is development, histology, and visceral surface of the liver. And development and histology. Okay. Development of pancreas. Here over here, pancreas is small cell. See, again at the junction of foregut and midgut, you will find there is one more bud developing, that is pancreatic bud, isn't it? See, actually liver development is also shown, like whole of the GIT, foregut, midgut. At the junction of foregut and midgut, I told you we have this hepatic bud, right? Which is developing into pars cystica and pars hepatica. Similarly, for the development of pancreas, we have the dorsal pancreatic bud and ventral pancreatic bud. They keep growing, and they just turn and they just come to lie one over the other, okay, leading to the formation of complete pancreas. So, okay, which forms head, neck, ancillary process, body, and tail. Okay, so that happens. The rotation you will see. Okay, So development, larger dorsal bird and smaller ventral bird. Okay, these fuse to form the pancreas. Okay, just read once, you will easily understand pancreas development. Then relations of ovaries. Okay. Where are the ovaries situated? Ovarian fossa in the pelvic cavity. Give me a little. Okay, it's better I go like this and not finding. See here better. See ovaries. You know, like ovaries are present in the peritoneal cavity, and the ovary is covered by a peritoneal covering which is called as mesovarium. And ovary is suspended by the thickening of these folds only, which are called as ligaments. So we have suspensory ligament of the ovary from the upper pole towards the posterior abdominal wall, and then we have one more ligament, that is ligament of the ovary, coming from the lateral aspect of the uterus to the lower pole. Okay, then we have visceral relations. Now,
Ma'am, your voice is very low.
my voice is very low. You can't hear me, Ritika? Can you please write in chat box? Okay. Okay, better. So now see upper pole. Upper pole is broader. See, this is upper pole and this is lower pole. Now we are asked only relations. Okay. So the upper pole is broader than lower pole and it is related to uterine tube and external iliac vein. The right ovary may be related to appendix. This is all reading because in my PowerPoint, which I have taken previously, you will have pictures for each. Okay, just now try to correlate. Right ovary may be related to appendix. Okay, in pelvic position, and ovarian fimbria and suspensory ligament of ovary. You can see these are the fimbria. This is the suspensory ligament, what we are seeing in the upper pole. Then at the lower pole, this one, where we have ligament of the ovary. It is narrower than the upper pole and it is related to pelvic floor. It is connected by the ligament of the ovary to lateral angle of the uterus, which I already told you. Okay. Then anterior border. So ovary will have upper pole, lower pole, anterior border, posterior border, medial surface, lateral surface. So anterior border, also called as mesovarian border, is straight and it is related to uterine tube and obliterated umbilical artery. Enough better, two things you write. Posterior border, it is convex and related to again uterine tube, that is fallopian tube and ureter. Lateral surface, it is lying in the ovarian fossa, which is lined by parietal peritoneum. So this peritoneum is actually separating ovary from obturator vessels and nerve. Medial surface is large and it is covered by uterine tube. That means uterine tube only is forming the major relations like many poles and borders and surfaces. Okay. So the peritoneal recess. What is recess? Empty space. Like extension is usually called as recess. Like the peritoneal recess between the mesosalpinx. What is mesosalpinx? Fold of peritoneum with fallopian tube is called as mesosalpinx, or the peritoneal covering of fallopian tube is mesosalpinx. Okay. So on medial surface, it is covered by uterine tube. You also find peritoneal recess between mesosalpinx and this surface is known as ovarian bursa. So these are relations because exclusively relations only is asked. Okay. And then remaining one like are from thorax, but not from here. Okay, we'll open thorax. So, as Ritika, you were telling, coronary sinus is the largest venous channel of the heart, which is receiving venous blood from all parts of the heart, isn't it? So, it is receiving venous blood from oblique vein of left atrium, posterior vein of left ventricle, isn't it? Then it is also receiving veins from middle cardiac vein, small cardiac veins. Okay. So all these veins finally they open into coronary sinus. And we know like coronary sinus, where is it opening? As you said, it is opening in the right atrium. And it is guarded by a valve called as, what is the valve which is guarding here?
Trebatian valve.
Trebatian valve. Very good. Okay. So that is about coronary sinus. It's given here, see. Largest vein of the heart. It is situated in the left posterior coronary sulcus, 3 centimeters long. It is opening in the posterior wall of the right atrium. Okay. Okay, all these veins you should write with a great cardiac vein, middle cardiac vein, small cardiac vein, posterior vein of left ventricle, oblique vein of the left atrium of Marshall, and right marginal vein. All these veins, they are opening in coronary sinus. They will be accompanying their corresponding arteries. Okay, beta? Then, what is the next question from thorax? Internal mammary artery. What is the other name of internal mammary artery? Internal thoracic artery, isn't it? So internal thoracic artery is a branch of which artery?
Okay.
Here we have, right? Internal thoracic artery is a branch of, see here, it is shown here, exactly. This is, see, uh, this is the, from arch of aorta, you will see, what are the subdivisions we have? Subclavian artery and the common carotid artery, isn't it? So this from the
Yes.
brachiocephalic trunk on the right side, you will have subclavian artery, and then higher up you will have right common carotid artery. So from this subclavian artery, if you see, there is a downward artery which is called as internal thoracic artery. So this internal thoracic artery, which is also called as internal mammary artery, it runs on the interior aspect of the thoracic cage, interior of thorax, and usually in the sixth intercostal space it divides into two, no, it bifurcates. Okay, isn't it? What are those?
Uh,
Superior epigastric artery and musculophrenic artery, no?
cardio. Okay, yeah, muscular.
Comes straight down inside of the rib cage, it goes downwards, and you know, like on each space it gives like anterior intercostal arteries, isn't it, better? That picture is not here, but during my PowerPoint lectures I have shown you. Okay. See, internal thoracic artery arises from the inferior aspect of the first part of subclavian artery. Okay, opposite to thyrocervical. This is our thyrocervical trunk, and quite opposite it has started. It lies 2 centimeters above the sternal end of clavicle. That means like here, this much. So you will see it descends downwards. Okay. It runs on the interior side of the thoracic cage vertically downwards 2 centimeters from the lateral wall of sternum till 6th intercostal space, where it terminates finally into two. What are those? Superior epigastric and musculophrenic. The artery is accompanied by vena commitans. That means artery has two veins on either side. Okay. Then, so lymphatic nodes are also there. Then see relations of these arteries: sternal end of the clavicle, internal jugular vein, brachiocephalic vein, first costal cartilage, phrenic nerve. Okay. anteriorly pectoralis major. That means it is running like this, no? Upper 6 costal cartilages, external intercostal membrane, internal intercostal muscles, and first 6 intercostal nerves. So posteriorly endothoracic fascia and pleura. Branches, pericardiophrenik artery, mediastinal artery, anterior intercostal. Okay. And then perforating branches, superior epigastric and musculophrenic. If you remember, superior epigastric artery is actually entering inside the rectus sheath and it anastomoses with the inferior epigastric artery. Musculophrenic artery, that means after 6th intercostal space, the remaining anterior intercostal arteries are coming from musculophrenic. That means 7th, 8th, 9th spaces. They are actually getting the anterior intercostal arteries from musculophrenic and not directly from internal thoracic artery. The other names you can write distribution according to their names, like pericardiophrenik in the sense it supplies pericardium and the diaphragm. Mediastinal arteries will supply structures in the mediastinum. Intercostal arteries, they supply the structures in the intercostal space. That means intercostal muscles. Okay. So perforating branches, they supply the mammary gland. Superior epigastric artery supplies the rectus abdominis muscle because it enters the rectus sheath. Musculophrenic supplies the lower 3 intercostal spaces. Okay, beta? So that is all about internal thoracic artery. So that finishes the major questions, beta. Then we have only 2 markers, like pleural recesses. What are the pleural recesses we have? Costomediastinal recess and costodiaphragmatic recess, isn't it? The one which is towards the mediastinum is the costomediastinal recess, and the one which is towards diaphragm you have is the costodiaphragmatic recess. These are extra spaces which
Yes,
allow the
ma'am.
lungs to expand freely during deep breathing. Okay, costomediastinal and costodiaphragmatic. For example, suppose this black outline is pleura. This area is for costomediastinal recess, and lower one, this between pink and black line, this area and this area is costodiaphragmatic recess. Okay. Then foramen of Winslow. Where do we see? Epiploic foramen, which is seen at the right free margin of the lesser omentum. This actually helps in the communication of greater sac and lesser sac. Anyhow, these questions will come for 4 marks also. Cruciate anastomosis, we generally find at the back of the thigh. Okay. Tensor fascia lata. This is one of the muscles of the gluteal region. Okay. Which is coming from the outer lip of the iliac crest. Okay. And sinuses of pericardium. What are the sinuses we have? Transverse sinus and oblique sinus.
Transverse and oblique
So
sinus.
anyhow, these sinuses, all these very shorts what we have, they will also come for short notes. We will discuss in detail when these come for short notes. Okay, Ritika?